Hi, everybody. Welcome to All You Ever Wanted to Know. I'm Scott Fitzsimmons. It's special time to get into the host chair and join with Conservative Party of Canada MP for Yorkton Melville, Cathay Wagantall. How are you doing, Cathay?
Hi, Scott. I'm doing great, and so pleased to be here with you. This is great.
Well, it is. I'm excited because it's been a while since I've had a conversation with you about this, about lots of stuff, because there's so much going on. But how are you doing?
Well, overall, I'm fine. Battling the same colds as everyone else. However, really missing being back in the House of Commons where we should be, but enjoying the time at home too, and the opportunity to spend more time listening to the folks in my riding.
Wonderful. Well, I know that this is a time that has a lot of people confused as to what's happening, whatever party you follow or support. A lot of out there as to what is going on with Canada and what is prorogation or prorogue.
Right. We're prorogued right now. In other words, the House is not sitting when the Prime Minister of the day is concerned about the fact that he doesn't see that the House is functioning properly or has concerns about needing to reset. They do what's called prorogation. So he went to the Governor General and said, we need to take a break and step back. His explanation for that was that, we're not getting anything done in the House. Somehow that was the opposition's fault, but actually we were waiting for them to do what the Speaker had required they do and present the information and the files on the Green Slush Fund where there's been abuse of funding. So that was holding the House up, there's no question, but they could have dealt with that. So they did prorogue until the end of March, and he became a little bit more transparent in indicating that during that time they would also have a Liberal leadership race, that he would be stepping down once a new leader was determined. Now, that's not a good reason to shut down Parliament. We certainly have all run leadership races while the Parliament is still sitting. But that was his decision to do it that way, which I think is facing some challenges possibly in the court system at this time.
I was wondering about that because I don't know, have we prorogued in the past, in my lifetime, the last 45 years?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it is a tool that can be used, and you come back. And quite often it's attached to a speech from the throne and a new budget and that type of thing. You bet.
Now, when it comes to right now, where do we stand and what is the plan for this? So what is the timeline for how long this is going to take to continue?
It will be ending the end of March. We'll be back in the House, assuming that with the new leader that the Liberal Party has, the decision is made to come back to the House. You see, the decision could be made by that new leader, who is actually at that point the Prime Minister, the opportunity to go to the Governor General and say, for whatever reason they may have, that they think we need to move into an election, or could possibly even suggest ending prorogation sooner so we can get back to work and deal with the challenges that we're facing, especially on the tariffs, because there are things that can only be done through the House of Commons. So it's still up in the air, Scott. We're not going to know until this new leader is ordained and makes those decisions.
Now, you talk about some of the things that are going on outside of our borders are now becoming a little more harder to deal with when you've got the government in the situation it's in?
I would say absolutely. Yes, there's a lot of conversations going on back and forth across the border, but the Liberals need to put aside their partisan interests and recall Parliament because we need a Canada First plan. And that's what our leader, Pierre Poilievre, has been focusing on. And if we have time, there's about 7 items where he has said these are things actually we should be doing right now, not waiting until these tariffs are engaged. We could be doing so much right now to prepare.
Well, you go right ahead if you want to share some of those things.
Sure. Well, first of all, Pierre has indicated we need a dollar-for-dollar tariff carefully aimed at maximizing the impact on American companies while minimizing, obviously, its impact on Canadian consumers. So, Scott, that means that we need to target U.S. products that we can make ourselves We can buy elsewhere ourselves. We can buy elsewhere, or we can do without. For example, the big one that we should be focusing on, we have to retaliate against American steel and aluminum because Canadians, we have great steel and aluminum, and we can make a lot of those vital products at home. So that's a step one.
Yep.
That yes, we have to challenge them dollar for dollar. But what he has said too, and I have not heard this, and I think the government fails to truly value the people that are impacted most with this, and that is that our leader has said those tariff revenues, so any money that Canada brings in, has to go into helping affected workers and businesses. In other words, the government should not keep a single dime of that new revenue for other purposes. As you know, the Prime Minister he's spent everything. He's borrowed everything, and he's printed everything that he can, and has left us in quite an economic disaster. So Pierre's purpose, and I was thrilled to hear this. We will help out the workers and the businesses that have to pay those tariffs. Yeah.
Now, when you look at these different aspects, how does it directly affect Saskatchewan? Yorkton, Melville is your riding. What areas does that affect for Yorkton, Melville?
Well, first of all, the economy is hurting, which means I hear a lot in my riding, like everywhere else, people cannot afford this inflation. They can't afford groceries. They can't afford to heat their homes. They can't afford to put gas in their cars. And then if you run a small business, I can say that the cost of everything, especially since COVID, has not balanced out. So it really is taking a long time for businesses to get back to what they were pre-COVID, when here we are again facing another serious circumstance, right? So we need to pass a bring-it-home tax cut is what we call it. And, of course, this needs to be done in the House of Commons. We need to bolster our economy for Canadians, stop inflation, and we need to save and create jobs. So Canada needs massive tax cuts on work, investment. Investment is going south, has been, actually since the second year of this government, when things got really rough. We need to protect our energy sources and get back to developing our amazing resources and build homes and make stuff here at home. So obviously the two things that need to happen first is the carbon tax has to be cut. And we have made that absolutely clear. It's impacting everything upstream, downstream, and everyday costs for Canadians. And then the capital gains tax hikes too. We have all of these professionals and small businesses that have been putting those funds away for their own retirements, and now the Prime Minister has attacked those as well. So in my riding, I hear all the time, it's too expensive. It's just too expensive for the basic things in life, and the tax levels are unmanageable. So as a result, you never get to where your economy can grow because it's being stifled.
And our
cost of living
is probably better than many of the different places to live in Canada. So if it's hard here, then it's going to be hard everywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. Saskatchewan is I just love it. I don't know what else I can say. The common sense, the sense of community, the hard work that people do. And I'll just maybe mention this as I go door to door in even my very small communities, which I love. Each one has its own special flavor. It's amazing. I will meet people who I can think specifically right now of an Ontario couple and a couple from BC. Both were retiring, and you know what? They couldn't afford to retire in BC or Ontario, so they moved to rural Saskatchewan.
Yep.
And the one couple contacted their 3 married children back in Ontario and said, we're going to give you each a chance to come out here and stay with us, look for work, and decide if you want to move. And that entire family has moved into our province.
Wonderful. That's amazing to hear. And we love being in Saskatchewan. And you being the MP for Yorkton and Melville, how can people contact you if they would like to share concerns or just find out information?
Right. Well, I put a lot of ads in the newspapers, the local papers, so the information is there. They can contact me either by email or phone. Constituency office is 306-782-3309. And Kristen and Loretta are amazing. I am so blessed in both my offices here and on the Hill. And yeah, definitely call, leave a message if necessary, and they will get back to you.
Wonderful. Well, once again, we are talking with Yorkton Melville MP Cathay Wagantall with the Conservative Party of Canada, and we're going to continue in just a moment on All You Ever Wanted to Know. We're back here on All You Ever Wanted to Know. I'm Scott Fitzsimmons here with Yorkton Melville MP with the Conservative Party of Canada, Cathay Wagantall. It's great to have you here again. Lots of information to be sharing with you today because so much is uncertain, and we did cover off some of those things earlier on, but when it comes to agriculture and Saskatchewan, there are some other things that are going on that are
definitely in the agriculture area and with wildlife conservation and hunting and angling, anything to do with our wonderful rural areas. But specifically, our farmers have a lot of concerns right now. One of those issues that they're facing is they're hearing about this national program for ecological corridors. So first of all, I'll say if you want a lot of information on this topic, you can certainly go to the Government of Canada website and just put in National Program for Ecological Corridors, and it will give you a lot of information there. So what are these corridors?
Yes.
Right? So first of all, this government has decided that we need to protect more of Canada for conservation purposes. And the first thing they did have created these large masses of area, kind of like a national park. These large masses of area, kind of like a national park, but not, because they want them to be basically not touched by human interference, is how they would word it. So by 2030, the goal is to have 30% of Canada in these protected areas, with a buffer zone of another 25%. And of course, most of Canada up north, you could pretty well take care of that. But there is a movement more and more into the southern areas of Canada, of course, and most of our population lives along our American-Canadian border, right? And so what they've decided is that we need these ecological corridors to be protected, which is kind of like a pathway between these larger protected areas for animals to be safe and to be able to migrate and not be impacted by human interference. Well, Scott, those areas are along, if I have a map here, you can actually see it on the website too. And it shows these fuzzied out areas that would be these corridors. And in Saskatchewan, it goes from the Alberta border, not quite all the way north up to Saskatoon, but all the way down past Regina towards the border, and then another little area down along the U.S. border in Alberta. So these are zones that they say need to be protected for the migration of animals. Well, I don't know. I think our animals are doing quite fine on this front. And Manitoba as well, all the way from Flin Flon down east of Dauphin towards Brandon, and then on the west side of Brandon, they have our area. So what I'm hearing from my farmers, and I can totally appreciate this, they're looking at this and saying, okay, they're wanting to protect these areas. That's where we grow food and raise cattle and sheep and pork. You know, what's going to happen to our agriculture industry if this is put into place?
Yep.
And Parks Canada says that they will not identify, create, own, or administer these ecological corridors. And yet it's being initiated by the federal government.
Yep.
They say it's going to be up to local and regional jurisdictions, land managers and stewards, along with experts and knowledge holders, to advance these corridors.
Yeah.
So, I can appreciate the apprehension, especially since we've also learned, and I was able to attend a meeting on this in Ottawa, the Department of Oceans and Fisheries is no longer going to give oversight to freshwater fishing areas inland in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. So they're planning to hand that off to another consortium, I believe, of Indigenous folks who want to give oversight to this. So, nothing wrong with that, except for it's all of ours, isn't it?
Yep.
And we have a lot of fishers, as they mentioned, who fish in that area that are not necessarily Indigenous. So there's concern, and rightfully so. I think we need to be part of the conversation with this. I can assure you that from our perspective as the official opposition right now, and when we would form government, 30% of Canada by 2030, and their goal is 50% of Canada by 2050, that this is what I would say not a wise direction to go. It's basically shutting down most of our nation to exposure to Canadians.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the idea of working to help our wildlife is not a bad thing, but
No.
It seems very open. It seems like there's not a lot of direction in this, and it seems kind of just a blanket statement as to how we can do things better without. It'll just take care of itself, right?
Right. Well, they Parks Canada used the International Union for Conservation of Nature's definition of an ecological corridor. So in other words, this is something going on internationally, right, which red flags for me. So they've created a definition for this, even though they're not going to oversee it, apparently.
Yeah.
A clearly defined geographical space where governance, management, and stewardship over the long term maintain or restore effective ecological connectivity while upholding Indigenous stewardship values. So that gives you a bit of an idea. And quite honestly, I am very proud of Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
And our efforts have always been to conserve and to take care of nature. We depend on our land, our air, and our waterways, right?
Yes.
And I often am very outspoken in the House of Commons about the many ways that we have gone above and beyond and continue to, even with research. Zero tillage, that was created here 30 years ago, 35 years ago, and now is just beginning to happen in other countries. So we have a lot to be very, very proud of, and an awful lot to, our hunting and angling folks are the most environmentally conscious people in the country.
Wow. Now, when it comes to this, how does this affect the Yorkton-Melville area? Because there's a lot of agriculture that is, I guess, got a lot of questions coming for this.
Right, and rightfully so. I think it's important that they review these sites and organize. We have a lot of wonderful folks, like with the canola growers, all the oats, the various organizations that are out there working on behalf of their industry, also with grazing and our pasture lands, and make sure that they are part of this conversation. Now, it's not easy to do, honestly, Scott, to be part of these conversations, because these things seem to happen before there's really a good awareness, and they've already done one-time calls for proposals that end June 28th, 2024, to receive funding to help with these corridors. And Parks Canada, who says that they're not overseeing this, has contributed nearly $6 million to support these corridors in Canada, and another $1 million as well. So money talks, right?
Yes, and there's so many questions in here as to why it's happening. I mean, it sounds like one hand is feeding the other if you're going to see the Parks Department handing it over to the government for this area, especially, like you said, if they're not going to be overseeing it. Now, where is this in the process? Is this something that can be, I guess, stopped or at least had more discussion options as how to go with the numbers, or is this just something that you're going straight forward?
Well, that's a very good question. Quite honestly, with the 2030 plans of this government in 2050, they have been barreling along on their own accord, claiming that they have had those conversations that need to be had. I would say some of them have happened, but not all. And certainly, I would say that this will, well, let's just say we will be taking a very hard look at this, because once again, what this government seems determined to do, although they say that the environment and the economy go hand in hand, we have certainly seen that they are sacrificing the wealth, the prosperity, the hard.
Well, and I know a lot of farmers, there's a lot of questions as to if farmers are being treated fairly as it is, but to start to, I guess, would they be taking over their land, or would they just not be able to use that land?
Great question. Great question. I mean, I look at it, and our farmers have had to face so many challenges. The carbon tax is one, but also just told by this date you're going to have to use this much less fertilizer, say on canola. Oh, but we also want you to raise more canola because we want it to be used as a fuel, right? So you're right. One department does not know what the other department is doing.
Yeah.
And it impacts our ability to feed the world.
Yeah.
We faced food scarcity during the COVID challenges that also, well, don't get me, I won't even get started on that.
That would take another interview in
Yes,
itself. Yeah.
but our farmers certainly...
That would take another interview in itself. Yeah.
But our farmers certainly, you know, they face challenge after challenge when it comes to this government not understanding how important rural Canada is. And, you know, I jest a bit about it, but yet I often say rural Canada, our ridings should be weighted, yes, on how many people live there, but let's face it, they're small populations compared to our cities. But why don't we include the value of that riding based on how much of our GDP is produced there? Wouldn't that be something? And so I can say, you know, as conservatives, we value and understand the incredible impact that rural Canada places on our economy and our GDP.
So if people have questions about this in itself, you mentioned a website. Where is that again?
Government of Canada website. So all you have to do, actually, I just put in National Program for Ecological Corridors, and it'll take you right to the Government of Canada to take a look at all of this information that is there.
Well, I'm just very thankful that you're bringing this up, and I know a lot of people have or will have questions about that, but one thing that people are talking about these days, especially seeing as it's directly affecting us, is these tariffs that this new government in the United States are putting forth for Canada if under different circumstances. Now, people have questions. What are these, and how do we deal with this?
Well, first of all, we have to remember something here that I hope Canadians' memories hold dear as we move towards an election. Trump did not create the circumstances that we're in. The Trudeau NDP government did. But he sees the weakness of our state. And, I don't even want to use the word state there. That could be misinterpreted, right?
Yeah.
So he sees and is planning to place tariffs on Canadian goods, claiming that we have a surplus of products going into the States. Well, the only area that there's a surplus is in our oil. And they are getting that oil at a very reduced rate. It's being shipped down to Texas, an area, and being developed and sold for a fortune. So, as Pierre says, it's time. This is a wake-up call for Canada, and we need to get back to basically developing our own resources. It's going to take money to turn this around to where we're self-sufficient, but you know what? We can do it, and we know that we can. We will challenge them dollar for dollar. We will give all of that revenue that may take place back to the people who are impacted, the workers and the businesses. We will bring in massive tax cuts. The carbon tax, the capital gains tax have to go. We have to bolster our own economy. And, you know, I'm sorry, it's time for the economy to be the priority. And we already do a great deal for our environment, and we will continue to do that. But we have to restore our nation, our sovereignty, our ability across east-west. Come on, provinces. We are a nation, one nation under God, right?
Correct, yep.
And then LNG, I mean, we lost Germany and Japan because our prime minister said there was no business case for us to sell our LNG. We got to get rid of C-69, and we need to build LNG plants, pipelines, mines, factories, and port expansions to overseas markets. And we got to remove the red tape. And my goodness, what I hear about permits is just mind-boggling. So these are all things that Pierre is saying we need to be doing right now. Why are we waiting for Trump to bring in these tariffs to do these things that we should have been doing all along? And those interprovincial trade barriers, I could go on and on. You know, I'm really excited about the truth that Canada could turn this around. But our prime minister has us shut out of the House of Commons. It's time for them to get their house in order. Let's have an election, and let's bring it home for Canadians.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. If people want to find out more about how they can contact you, find out information, how can they do that?
Well, Cathy.Wagantall@parle.gc.ca is my email address. And 306-782-3309. I don't call myself very often.
Wonderful.
There you go. Thanks so much,
You're
Scott.
welcome. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap things up?
You know what? I am just excited about what's going to be happening within the next, I hope, weeks. We will put Canada first, now and always. And in spite of this hardship that Trump is placing on us, we have an opportunity here to do the right thing and restore Canada.
Thank you very much. It's been great to chat with you again, and we look forward to doing it again.
Let's do it, Scott.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This has been All You Ever Wanted to Know. I'm Scott Fitzsimmons. Thank you.